want to turn to NFL because it is wildcard weekend this weekend, which is a slightly expanded version of your normal wildcard weekend. There's no Premier League. The FA Cup is on. We thought you're probably going to end up watching a lot of NFL this weekend. We may as well set the table for you. And I'm delighted to say Mike Carlson is here with us this morning. Mike, good morning to you.
Good morning, Owen. And, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? 10 contenders and a blind referee. Sounds just like the NFL last weekend.
A couple of years ago, Owen did a sketch for us here, Mike, about why we should all become Buffalo Bills fans. It was a joke at the time. This time, if you're getting on any bandwagon, the time now to join the Buffalo Bills bandwagon is this weekend. It ain't a joke anymore.
No, not at all. And if recency bias is your big thing, the win over Miami was absolutely dominating in a game that Miami basically was winning in to go in the playoffs. So people were thinking it might be a tough one. They didn't rest their quarterback. They went out and played to win. At home, they're very difficult. Conditions suit them really well. And I think it's a great story because they built that team really consistently upward for about 3 years now with Josh Allen's arrival, and Allen in the second half of this season became a definite MVP candidate and played it at a remarkably high level for a guy who everybody thought had severe accuracy problems. And one of the old adages of the NFL is that you can't teach a quarterback to be more accurate. But that appears to be exactly what's happened with Josh Allen.
Who takes the credit for that then?
I think it's probably a combination of offensive coordinator and Brian Daboll and maybe Allen himself. And what you can see, you only notice sort of small differences, but the one thing that stands out to me is that because he throws on the run so much and because he has such a strong arm, they've got him at least throwing from balance more, which gives him a little bit. And someone has just taught him to take the juice off the ball. You don't have to John Elway every pass in there at 100 miles an hour.
Was the sense that he always had this in him, Mike, that this season was coming if he did get cultivated in the right way? Or has this really taken everybody by surprise that he's putting in an MVP caliber season?
No, well, the MVP caliber is a bit of a surprise, but I think a lot of us, looked at them as the favorite in that division going into this year, given all the Patriots' troubles and given that Miami, I think, as we saw, are probably still a year away, and certainly in terms of quarterback development. And Allen's a good case for not making quick decisions on quarterbacks. I mean, everybody, when Tua came in for Miami, everybody had Tua madness, and the rest of the season has shown that he's very much a rookie quarterback with a lot to learn, and could conceivably get better as well. But Sean McDermott is a very, very steady coach. It's got that kind of Carolina Panthers from a few years ago feeling. And Josh Allen is their Cam Newton from the year they went to the Super Bowl, only he's performing at a higher level passing-wise than Cam Newton did. And otherwise, it's the same kind of stifling defense that they play, which means that they don't have to score 50 points as they did against Miami in order to win games.
The problem here, of course.
One more thing. The acquisition of Stephon Diggs was huge for them because Diggs gives them a receiver who's a threat at every level of the offense. He can go deep, he goes across the middle, and he's got very, very sure hands, and that makes a quarterback's life easier as well.
The problem, of course, is actually winning this thing without the Bills Mafia being present. So all the fold-up tables in Tampa Bay are thanking their heavens for the life that they are now going to lead, because I had pictures of when Buffalo Bills would eventually win this thing, the Bills Mafia outside, jumping through tables, and the greatest tailgate of all time. So is it really worth winning, Mike, is my point.
Yeah, I suppose there are reasons why you might want to win otherwise, but yeah, I mean, once you set those people free down in Florida, coming out of the frozen tundra up in Buffalo, you really do have to take defensive measures. But I think it's a wonderful story, and everyone will be talking in the first round of the playoffs about Frank Reich, the Indianapolis coach who quarterbacked the Bills, and when Jim Kelly got got hurt, led them to the greatest comeback in NFL playoff history against the Houston Oilers, who are now the Tennessee Titans. So, like if the Bills are if they beat Reich and then they go and they beat the Titans in the playoffs, and then they play Tom Brady, say, in the Super Bowl in Tampa, which would be a first for a team to play in their home stadium, it would be too good a script to ever come true.
So they play the Colts on Saturday, and if anybody wants to watch in terms of the excitement level, that's the keep an eye out for this young quarterback and his ability to run and his ability to move, and Stephon Diggs down the field. The other games this weekend, it's the Rams at Seattle, and then it's Tampa at Washington. They're the Saturday games. Sunday is the Ravens at the Titans, the Bears at the Saints, and the Browns at the Steelers. So there's actually loads of great games. I know everybody was kind of complaining about adding extra teams to the wildcard weekend, but what it means is that we've got really good games this weekend, Mike.
Yeah, and I think the Sunday slate is very solid, although the Bears' addition to the playoffs is not necessarily a really positive one. But they're lucky. They're lucky in the sense that they're playing New Orleans, who Drew Brees still doesn't look like the Drew Brees of old or very old or very, very old. And otherwise, though, Baltimore, Tennessee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh on Sunday are both really good-looking matchups. The Browns beat Pittsburgh this past Sunday, but it was Pittsburgh B team basically resting their key players. And Tennessee has beaten Baltimore in last year's playoffs and in this season just gone by in Baltimore both times. So they seem to have their number. But what you've got on Sunday are four teams who all depend on three teams that all depend on the running game. Baltimore gained 440 yards rushing on Sunday. Tennessee have Derrick Henry, who gained 250 all by himself. Cleveland have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in a kind of 1-2 punch. And everybody, marvels about this league being a passing league. And of course, there were more passing touchdowns than any season in league history. There were also more rushing touchdowns because defenses have not been great this year. I think one of the biggest problems with the pandemic is that the lack of preparation, the lack of practice, the lack of contact means that teams aren't tackling as well as they should be tackling, and that's going to be a real problem. So Sunday's a great slate. As usual, the NFL puts the cold weather games in the late slot. So on Saturday, Tampa's at Washington in the evening, and Pittsburgh's at home against Cleveland in the evening, which means the cold weather sets in, which is good news for rushing as well. And the one that really fascinates me is the Tampa-Washington game, because Washington is not a good team, but they have a tremendous front seven on defense. And what's Tom Brady's biggest vulnerability is to pass rush. So, I think what you're going to see there is probably a lot of all-out rushing of Tom Brady to try to get him to act like a 42-year-old instead of the mere 38-year-old he appears to be when he's playing so far. For the second half, certainly, of this season.
It seems that that's what Washington have tried to do. Chase Young bouncing off the field on Sunday. I'm not sure if you saw that. What was he saying? Tom Brady, I want Tom. Is that a good move to be shouting that about one of the best players of all time the week before a playoff game?
Yeah, somehow I don't think that Tom Brady. I remember there used to be a TV commercial with a young quarterback who was getting his first start, and they have him in the tape room with the film projector going because it was that long ago, and he's watching Lawrence Taylor play defense, and Taylor is destroying the quarterbacks he's facing, and it's a commercial for Tums, which was a stomach settler, and the guy's turning green and then getting the Tums to keep his stomach going. And I think that's kind of the thing they'll be showing Brady, but he's been there and been through that. I don't think it's going to scare him at all. You always tell your players not to give the other team locker room bulletin board kind of stuff. But one of the things that's happened for Tampa in the second half of the year, especially, is that their offensive line is sort of settled down and they protect Tom Brady pretty well. So that's going to be the interesting part of this matchup. Now, Alex Smith is a quarterback for Washington, which is a great story, and he's probably going to win comeback player of the year, but that doesn't mean that he's been a really good quarterback since he came back and played, and their offense isn't a really powerful offense. And Tampa's defense is a little bit underrated. They can make some plays. So, much as it would be a great upset scenario, and as a number of people point out, the last two teams that made it into the playoffs with losing records both won their first playoff game at home, because you get in as division champions. So they get their first game at home, and they both won that game. So there is that kind of feeling that if you were looking for a real upset, that would be kind of the one to look at, because I can't see, for example, Baltimore winning at Tennessee being anyone's idea of an upset, really. And then, the Rams, Seattle, who knows? I don't know if John Wolford or if Jared Goff's going to be back at quarterback. But to be honest, Wolford didn't have a high-powered offense going there, but he really did keep things alive. And that's something that Goff sometimes can't do when the pressure gets on. But if the Rams are to win that game, and I really don't think they will, but it'll be their defense, because they're a very, very strong defensive team. And people know Aaron Donald's up there, but they're pretty solid all the way back.
If you were to pick somebody to get hot to win it from here, who would not be who you expect to win it from here at this point, which of the teams or which of the quarterbacks kind of strikes you as somebody who could do an Eli Manning or a Joe Flacco on this, as opposed to what we expect, which is Patrick Mahomes in the final, probably against Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, the kind of problem is none of, apart from Chicago and Washington, really, maybe Tampa, it'd be funny to cast Tom Brady in that role, wouldn't it? But I'm sure a lot of people are thinking that, that Brady was not really expected, especially after the first weeks of the season, to turn into playoff Tom Brady with this team. But if he did that, I think it would be a bit of a surprise. The team that could turn around maybe is Seattle, because everything goes on Russell Wilson. And, each year you think, okay, this is the year Seattle's put it together so that, the game doesn't depend on, let's keep it close till the fourth quarter, and then Russell Wilson will win it for us by making a couple of huge plays. And otherwise, I think Tennessee is probably, I'm not sure they get past the Ravens. By Friday, I'll probably be picking the Ravens to win that game. But nobody still gives Ryan Tannehill much credit for what he does, and does pretty well. And the emergence of A.J. Brown, Baltimore's got Hollywood Brown. I like to call him Bulldozer Brown after that play he made against the Ravens, where he carried two guys into the end zone with him. But his emergence alongside Corey Davis means that they've got receiving threats now that open up their game a bit. Derrick Henry's obviously the focus of the offense, but Tannehill running and passing off play action, they could carry it. But their defense just isn't that good, and that's always the question. When you get decent quarterbacks making the playoff run, which is what I put Eli Manning in that category, it's usually because they're on a really strong defensive team that plays well, which is exactly what the Giants did in their playoff run in 2007 and beat the Patriots, and then in 2011. And they especially did well against the Patriots by rushing the passer. So, I hesitate to say Alex Smith is going to make a long playoff run in this one. But, it's going to be difficult. And there's no good solution for the problem of wild cards and bye weeks, because two teams getting a bye was interesting. One team getting a bye is sort of less interesting. And by expanding the playoffs, you let weaker teams in. And one point I think that doesn't get made much is everyone's complaining about the NFC and Chicago at 8-8 and Washington winning the horrible Eastern Division and at 7-9. But one of the reasons for that is that the AFC had the two worst teams in football in the Jags and the Jets. And they also had Houston and Cincinnati, who Cincinnati were 4-11-1. That the worst team in the NFC was 4-11-1. That was the Eagles. So it's partly a case that a lot of teams look good because they ate up those weak teams at the bottom of the schedule, and even more so in the NFC. Seattle and the rest of the NFC West all played the NFC East and beat up on them. the Rams were 4-0 against the weak NFC East. So that kind of changes things there too. But I think you're absolutely right. It's everybody's waiting for Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes to enter next week. And
is it one of those two who's going to win MVP, Mike?
Oh, I think Rodgers is a lock for the MVP right now, because the voting will get done before any of the playoff games are taken into account. Mahomes has done, in a way, he's kind of been Russell Wilson in that he's done what he's had to do. And Kansas City have won a lot of close games where you won't necessarily think it was in danger, but they haven't played as well as you get Mahomes in some years. So I think Rodgers is number one, and you could actually make a case for Josh Allen being the MVP of the AFC. Although it's kind of a toss-up between him and Mahomes.
Mike Carlson, good stuff. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks a million.
Oh, thanks, Jer.
It's Mike Carlson giving us some thoughts there this Tuesday morning at 8:49. If you want to get in touch with us, a reminder that the number is 087 9180 180. Reminder to OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to talk about Cork and their funding in just a moment. But to wrap that up, Owen, you've gone on the NFL bandwagon this year a little bit?
I've always been a Buffalo Bills fan. You know this. I follow every single game. And I am paying particular attention over the last 48 hours. I've hopped on the bandwagon again.
The Buffalo Bills obviously were in 3 successive Super Bowls in the 90s, and there's a missed kick and to win it, and there's a brilliant 30 for 30 about it, where the guy is looking back and still kind of in tears about the missed kick, and they've never won a Super Bowl, and that was a great team, led by an Irish American QB who has gone on to have this very public battle with cancer as well. And it's like this kind of Mayo-esque story, which, this year there's actually a reasonable chance. They're playing so well. If anybody wants a feel-good story this weekend and for the next few weekends to follow, get aboard the Buffalo Bills bandwagon. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and as Mike was saying there, the legitimate improvement in a quarterback is a story that anyone can get behind as well. He was obviously quite high profile coming into the team and has gone to a whole new level this year, Josh Allen. The very recent memories. The first time I sat aboard the bandwagon, it was kind of a Tyrod Taylor-led team. You'd Nathan Peterman, I think, played a couple of playoff games, maybe just one playoff game. So times have been tough if you just focus on the quarterback a little bit. But Josh Allen, all of a sudden, is really, really, really good. And that's all you can hope for, because even in the previous format, I know there's an extra couple of teams this year, but even in the previous format, you tended to get a couple of teams in the playoffs who had average quarterbacks, either due to injuries late on in the season or maybe a defense that was amazing and carried them through. And I don't know how that happens, considering it's the most important position by a mile. But this year, that's not the case for Buffalo Bills. They actually have a really good quarterback and will be better than his opposite number in a lot of the games that he plays. And hopefully it will be a few games that he gets to play.